The impact of firework displays can be catastrophic for horses. A survey has revealed that over 100 horses are killed every year, with a further 317 injuries reported annually. These figures are likely much higher, as many incidents are not reported to charities like the BHS, which estimates only 1 in 10 are documented. So how can we keep our horses safe on fireworks night? Join us now for a special episode with Ruth Court, the horse team development lead at Blue Cross, who has expert advice on how to prepare for the fireworks season and what we can do to keep our precious animals safe. And don't forget to share your experiences with us in the comments section below. Ruth, welcome to Curious Equestrian.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Ruth, how do you feel at this time of year as the season approaches?
It can be a very difficult and worrying time, can't it, for many people as well as pets, and in particular horse owners, which is what we're talking about today. And I think there's just that sort of sense of not quite knowing sometimes, isn't it? You know, it's not just one night of the year anymore, and we're actually calling it bonfire season now, aren't we? Which really shows that it can spread over even a couple of weeks, really, depending when bonfire night itself falls. So it's always a bit of an anxious time, particularly for those with horses and other pets as well. But sort of just preparing and wondering what's going to happen, I guess.
And what have you seen, Ruth, over the years, and that of your colleagues and across the rescue sphere, in terms of bonfire nights, fireworks, displays and horses?
Well, we've been very lucky at Blue Cross. We have 2 physical sites where we rehome horses, and we're lucky because their location is fairly rural. So we haven't had any sort of serious incidences on site, although I do know of other equine welfare charities that have unfortunately lost ponies that have been on site, one through a heart attack and a couple through injury. Last year, Blue Cross carried out a survey around fireworks. I've got some examples here of some of the responses we had from the public. It was nearly 900 people replied. So, you know, you expect people to be replying and saying, oh, my horse ran, or my horse injured himself, or cut himself, or knocked himself, because horses are prey animals. They're flight animals. It's their natural instinct is to run. But it was quite sad, really, to see that, yes, there's those injuries, but actually, because of horses running, I've got one here, the horse was spooked by fireworks, ran down a bank, fell into a ditch and broke his neck. So we are actually talking of fatalities. Another example here, my mare miscarried and lost her foal. Another pony, young, healthy pony dying of a heart attack, elderly pony running through a fence and ran until she collapsed on the road. So we're not just talking bumps and scrapes and cuts. It is leading to, unfortunately, horses dying as a result of their injuries. So really sad to see, and I think it really does bring it to life. And also things like colic. So again, not necessarily an injury, but the worry and the stress commonly brings on cases of colic, which we know is really serious for horses. So the range of injuries is huge, really.
So, Ruth, can you give us some expert help and advice as to what we can do at this really frightening time of year on fireworks night? And sadly, as you mentioned, it's not just one night now. It is a season, for over the entire month, we start to see fireworks displays popping up across October, November, in January, New Year's Eve, but also on events like Halloween now, we've noticed that fireworks are being let off. So what can we do during these weeks on end to try and keep our horses safe?
Yeah, I would look on this in 3 different ways. And the first thing I would say to the listeners is to plan. So You can't always plan for fireworks going off because people do let them off at random times. But if we know we're coming up to a busy time of year for fireworks, I would say get to know what's going on in your local area. So social media is a great thing, isn't it? If you've got a local Facebook group or something, sometimes people are getting more used to posting on there, if they are going to be letting off fireworks. But I would say be proactive, actually put posts on there, just nicely asking if anybody in the area is planning to let fireworks off. Just explain. Most of the public aren't actually aware that horses may be frightened or react, so just a nice post explaining why you're asking, and generally get a really good response. I've done that in the past. Get to know if there's any organised events going on as well. So, hopefully that'll give you an idea, and probably as well what sort of time, if people are letting fireworks off, they generally will share what time they're planning to do that. So that gives you some idea of when you need to be around. I would also say as well, just plan to either be with your horse or for someone else to be. So if you keep your horses on your own, just plan to be down at their field or at their stable. Preferably have somebody with you. If you keep your horse on a livery yard with other people, perhaps arrange for a few of you to be there, or on a rota system. So you're really planning ahead and making sure somebody's there just to observe the horses. The next thing I would say or advise people to do is just to have a good think about your facilities. So there's no right or wrong as to whether you have your horse in a field or in a stable, but the general advice is do what your horse is used to. So if your horse is used to living out in a field with his field companions, don't suddenly change that routine and bring him into a stable. If you are worried and you think he's going to be safer in a stable or happier, try and plan ahead so that he's coming in for a week or so, a couple of weeks in advance, just so that they're used to being in a stable. And I would, just sort of get them used to anything different well in advance. So I'd have a quick check round your field if you're planning to leave your horse out in the field. Make sure your fencing is safe and secure. We're getting used, aren't we, to dividing our fields up quite often with electric fencing. I would actually suggest taking that down, just in case they start running around and they could run into it. Check for any low-hanging branches that they may run into, or just anything else that's normally around in your field. I would just have a good old tidy up and a check that there's nothing your horse is going to hurt themselves on. And then if you're planning to have your horse in, or if it's its normal routine, again, just have a quick check round in your stable. Make sure there's no sort of protecting nails or anything like that. If you don't have rubber matting on your floor, it's probably quite a good idea to either get some rubber matting or borrow some and have that underneath a nice deep bed. Again, you'd need to probably plan that a bit in advance. But again, if your horse starts to spook in its stable or spin around, it's going to reduce the risk of them slipping. So you're really sort of planning who's going to be about. You're making sure the facilities are safe, where they're going to be. Are they going to be in a field, in their stable? And also, it's a good time if you're on a livery yard just to sort of check it sounds fairly dramatic, but check your fire procedures, because we don't know where some of these fireworks are going to land. So make sure that everybody on the yard knows the fire evacuation procedure. Where will the horses go? You might be a good idea to have a little tidy up if, sometimes if there's trails of straw or a muck heap that's got a bit out of control, that can be a fire hazard. Maybe remove the muck heap, or if it's a trailer, make sure it's emptied. So just check all those things and make sure that the vet's contact details are nearby. So you're preparing your facilities, you're deciding where your horse is going to be, you're getting yourself organised, and then you need to prepare your horse. So again, deciding where your horse is going to be. Some horses don't like being in stables, so they may be outside, but you've got a plan for where they're going to be. And what you could potentially start doing is getting your horse used to louder noises and lights. So this is probably only going to really be relevant if your horse is inside or in its stable. But in the weeks building up to bonfire night, you could start playing very quietly to start with, but some music or some firework sounds. It's
So
just to
interesting.
desensitize them. So again, part of the planning, just get those, start very low noise though. Just and if your horse doesn't like it, then you can either stop trying that or just gently increase the sound volume. But yep, try desensitizing them to that. Sometimes calming music works instead, just to sort of block out the noise. What you could even do is, the LED flashy lights, as long as they're secured safely, potentially somewhere you could sort of just be, I mean, they're obviously not as dramatic as fireworks, but it is just those sort of lights flashing that you might be able to start getting your horse used to. So, yeah, I mean, my advice coming up to this time of year is plan, prepare, think. However hard we plan and try and account for everything, it doesn't always mean we're going to be able to keep a panicking horse safe. But I would certainly have a good think. And if you're really worried, speak to your vet well in advance, because they may be able to suggest some sedation for your horse.
So many options there, and thank you for such
Yes.
wonderful and thorough advice that we can really think about and start putting into practice. And of course, it's so much more of a dangerous time, Ruth, isn't it, for horses and their owners? Because each year it seems that these celebratory holiday seasons and days become bigger and more expensive, and the fireworks in themselves are louder and brighter and
Do you know, and that's what the public want. I was talking to a friend of mine who had some problems with a local firework display that was planned for very near their horses. And actually, they did manage to get the company to do to use quieter fireworks, so fireworks with less decibels, I think sort of between 70 and 90. They're becoming more common. And actually, it really worked because their horses were a lot calmer during that display. However, very sadly, the people at the display weren't happy because, as you say, they like the bangs, they like the flashes, they like the noise. That's what the public want to go and see. So, I think it's an education thing, isn't it? I'm pretty sure most of the general public wouldn't want to be thinking of any animal or human worrying during that sort of time, but they're probably just unaware, aren't they?
And isn't that sad? Because the event organiser is working with local horse owners to keep them safe and keep them well and alive. Yet it's the public then that are feeding back. They're not as happy. They didn't enjoy the event as much. Can we have the louder, fizzy bangs? And those event organisers are under pressure to earn money from the tickets. So therefore may feel pressured to put on those louder displays. But how awful when some are actually making moves to try and be more thoughtful for the local animals, and of course not just horses but pets and wildlife too.
That's it. Yeah, it is. But it isn't illegal, is it, to have a firework display? That's the thing. So it's probably just making public aware. And I think there is more general knowledge, as I said earlier. On Facebook groups. It's far more common now, isn't it, for people to sort of just pop on there if they're planning to have fireworks and so on. So I think the public is becoming a little bit more aware, and these quieter fireworks hopefully will become more common. In Scotland, they have legislation where they can enforce firework-free zones. So if it is, near a farm or areas where there's livestock, or where there's sort of vulnerable people, then that can happen. It's not law in England and Wales yet, but I think local councils can issue those. So, I mean, there is always that option if you're, on a yard or you're really worried about a local display. You could
And
perhaps try
actually,
that.
for event organisers who are trying to help animals, pets, wildlife, and of course those suffering with PTSD as well, ex-military, those suffering with mental health issues, people actually feel the effects of firework night as well. But for those who want to put on more friendly fireworks that are quieter, maybe they make it part of their advertising campaign and actually call it something to do with being, thoughtful of the animals around in the local community. or run an announcement before the display begins and say, actually, we've chosen to go for quieter fireworks because we're thinking of, and then list those who are affected by fireworks nights to make people think. I'm just thinking about one of my local towns, Woodbridge, do a fish friendly fireworks night because it is, of course, a river town with a beautiful river running through, and they have silent fireworks that all just light up, and sort of all different light displays all up against the buildings, so that it doesn't frighten off the fish and the local wildlife on the riverbanks, which then attracts the local people because they think, oh, actually we want to support our local environment and the creatures we share our planet with. So perhaps that could be an idea moving forwards.
I think it's great, isn't it? And people do forget about the wildlife, and birds becoming startled and so on. And I think that's fabulous. And it's just, getting people used to the idea. Again, we were planning to put a display on in our village, a year or so ago, and I brought this very thing up, could they be quiet fireworks? And it was sort of all discussed around actually selling it exactly as that. So,
and how did it go down, Ruth?
We didn't have the event. We
Ah.
didn't actually, but that wasn't because of the noise levels. But when I brought that subject up as a possibility, it was really warmly received. But it didn't actually go ahead in the end. But it was just educating the rest of the people in the village as to why we should think about it, and people were really receptive to it.
And you mentioned the law. So there isn't a specific UK fireworks and horses law, but setting off fireworks near horses or livestock is an offence under the Animal Welfare Act 2006, as it can cause unnecessary suffering, and responsible users of fireworks must warn neighbours with livestock and use them in a way that avoids harming animals. Now, this is actually quite a broad law, isn't it? Do you think, Ruth, that fireworks should be banned full stop?
Blue Cross doesn't think that at the moment, but what we are calling for is a reduction in the noise level, so a reduction in the decibels to around 70 to 90. I think the common decibel rate at the moment is 120 to 150, so really loud. So, the animal welfare legislation, it's not really designed to try and hold people account when they're actually carrying out a lawful event, because at the moment fireworks are lawful, they're not illegal, and the legislation itself is, as you say, that the wording is causing intentional or unnecessary suffering, but it's going to be so hard to prove that it was actually a firework that caused the suffering. So a reduction in the noise level would be a brilliant start, wouldn't it? And then we're not sort of taking away, the spectacle, and we all love fireworks and that special time of year and letting them off. But certainly to start with a reduction in that noise level would be a really good start.
And I love that you say, do what is best for your horse. So if they live out, they go out. And if they're used to being in the stable, they stay in. And to not be pressured by those around us. We had, myself and my mum, we always rent land for our horses. And we had someone come up and say, oh, we want to host a garden fireworks party right backing onto the land with the horses. And they said, why can't you put them in the stable and lock them all up for the evening? And I had to explain extensively why they live out, how, they've had traumatic backgrounds, they're rescues, they're not used to being stabled, so actually that would freak them out more and cause more harm and injury. And then myself and mum had to try and desperately plead with them to not hold the fireworks party. And they said, well, we've told you, we've done what is necessary. We've told you we're holding the party. And we said, but it's so close. The horses will be sharing the same skies with with your guests at your party. Horses will run through the fence. Horses can have a heart attack. Horses can drop dead. They can colic. And we had to go through all the different kind of persuasive techniques to try and ask them to not hold the party. And they were very, very angry and disgruntled. Eventually, they didn't host. They did cancel their party because they realised. But they said, so if all your horses die, it's not on us. And that was how they left the conversation. Ruth, what is your advice for dealing with difficult neighbours? And of course, we're talking about neighbours, those who aren't open to discussions and who very much want to hold their yearly annual party.
It's really hard, isn't it? As you say, I mean, it's discussion would have to be your first option, and just trying to educate people. As to the consequences, because I think people that don't know horses or any pets really probably just don't realise. So, as you say, just trying to talk through the consequences and the impact, and explaining why changing the horse's routine isn't that easy, isn't always possible, and actually there's no evidence to show that a horse is going to be safer in a stable than in a field. So I've heard that quite a few times. Oh, can't they just come into a stable? Well, maybe some could, but not all horses like being enclosed in a stable, But again, members of the public perhaps don't understand that they are herd living animals that are, designed to be outside and rely on each other for safety and the cues on how to react to things. And actually being enclosed in a stable can be worse for them. So it's really difficult because, as you say, the legislation isn't really covering fireworks at the moment safely, but I think it's just plugging away really and just trying to sort of spread that message. And unfortunately, I'm sure there are cases where people will just still go ahead and let the fireworks off, and that's just where we have to really try and plan and do our very best to keep calm and make the situation as relaxing as it can be and as safe as it can be for our horses. Sometimes though, horses might just have a little run and a trot and be startled, and actually sometimes when they can, then we've all seen horses do it when they jump. They'll run first and then turn around and look at what's scaring them. Sometimes once the horses have done that, they are okay, but the thing is we don't quite know how they're going to react, or if in the past they have reacted badly. That's possibly more worrying, isn't it? Because we've seen them do that before. So I probably haven't really given you an answer as to what we can do, but I think it's just it's spreading awareness and just trying to explain to those people
And
the
having
impact
open
it can have.
conversations, like you
Yeah,
say, just opening up that dialogue and trying to put forward your case is what we've always tried to do, and trying to stay
yeah,
calm. We end up almost begging and
yes,
pleading,
yeah,
but trying to keep that tone down so that it doesn't escalate further, because people
yes,
both sides get het up. Obviously, we're scared for our horses. They
yes,
desperately want their party and don't want to be told that they can't hold a
yeah,
party in their own garden. And of course,
yeah,
Ruth, I'm sure you appreciate this, that we're struggling both sides because now we have less and less land options to rent or to buy as horse owners. So we do find ourselves slap bang in the middle of housing estates or backing onto properties or in the middle of a village or close to a
yeah,
town. So actually suddenly
yeah,
the proximity of the parties aren't in the distance where the horse can just watch the horizon. They're actually overhead.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's becoming very common, isn't it, for people to be losing their grazing because it's being sold for housing and with development and so on. And actually, we're very, very lucky if we're located in a lovely rural location. One advantage might be is that there's possibility of just sort of one public display, possibly if you're in a more built up area, and perhaps in that dialogue with the display organisers is easier, but it is a problem. And just I keep saying, it's just trying to keep that dialogue, trying to keep it open, and well ahead of fireworks season as well. I don't know how well people get on with their neighbours, but maybe invite them around to meet your horses, and then if they've actually met them and can sort of associate, or see the horse, and that might make them rethink it once they've kind of met them and realised how lovely horses are. If you're on good terms with them, maybe that might be something to try.
Really good idea, making them feel that connection. Actually, it's unavoidable, isn't it, to kind of
Yeah,
block that out. And
yeah,
I find explaining
how horses react, that they can
Yes.
trample fencing and run through fencing and end up collapsing, that actually then that image in their head is then more disturbing, and they then choose to perhaps not have their firework display
Hopefully,
when next to a horse field. But again, every person is different, aren't they? You know,
they are.
And also every person reacts differently to being asked questions and
100%.
it's so
And
difficult,
it is really difficult. Again, just maybe suggesting, unfortunately they're more expensive, but maybe suggesting the quieter fireworks. But again, I think it's just important that we keep, supporting these campaigns, initially to reduce the noise of fireworks, because that would be a massive start, and keep educating people. As you say, general public doesn't realise that horses will run in blind fear and blind panic, literally, if they are scared enough. So
yeah, and explaining that the horses they enjoy seeing outside of their window, if it is someone who backs onto, an equestrian field, saying actually, you can enjoy that wonderful view, but please know it's going to be a very different fate for the horses, and actually they won't be relaxed and happily grazing when there's a fireworks display. Because as you mentioned, education is key, isn't it? A lot of people don't know how horses behave and react in different scenarios. It's interesting.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've had to, as many equestrians do, move our horses around a lot because of grazing changing, and we don't own our own grazing, and at one point we were within 50 acres and it backed onto a factory, and the factory had big sort of hills, if you like, banks, so that actually it kept a sort of level of discretion and privacy, and you couldn't see the big vehicles moving to and fro. But they would hold a massive fireworks party every single year for their staff. So again, it comes in the most unlikely of places, straight overhead, right above the horse field. Now, they would let us know, but there's no way they would cancel, because it was a great big corporate event, and they would put tens of thousands of pounds into their fireworks display. So, I mean, when these fireworks went off overhead, it was like a war zone. The whole 50-acre field would light up. I've never seen anything like it. And of course, the horses hadn't either. And at that stage, we had a herd of miniature horses, and we would go and be with them in the field. And one year we tried putting them on head collars, but we found they wanted to move. So then we would let them off. But they would gallop and gallop and gallop and foam up and sweat up and pant. And you cannot do anything other than be there and be a calming presence to try and tell them that this is shocking and frightening, but we're okay. And you can feel incredibly helpless, can't you, as a horse owner?
As we said earlier, you can plan and prepare, but actually a horse's natural instinct, nothing you do can prevent it from reacting how it naturally is going to. And actually, something you said there was really important, is just we've got to keep ourselves safe as well, because, as horse lovers and owners, our instinct is to get stuck in there and be close to them. But actually, it's not going to help them if we've been knocked over and hurt as well. So I would always say, try and keep yourself safe. Let your horse know that you're there. Remain really calm, as you say, because they'll pick up if we start panicking. If they start running around, just try and remain calm. Don't kind of get all worried, and let them know that you're worried they're running. But I would advise keeping yourself the other side of the fence. And likewise, if your horse is in a stable, don't go in the stable with your horse, because there's a likelihood that you could get knocked over or injured as well. So always be mindful of that and keeping yourself safe. And I think at the beginning of our chat, I sort of advised if you can have a friend with you or a couple of people with you while you are observing. I think that's a really good idea as well. But just coming back to that education bit, when you were saying about the light in the field, again, the general public don't realise, that a horse's hearing is 10 times better than ours. Their senses are so, far more acute than ours are. So, the impact of bright lights, as you say, and that noise. But again, it's just something like that is probably news to a lot of, non-horse keepers. So again, keeping little snippets of information like that you can share with them. But yeah, always keep yourself safe as well.
Thank you for giving us permission, Ruth, in that instance, because I don't know about you, but there is a pressure that almost if you're not in there stuck in with your horse, that you're less of a horse person because you appear wary of your own pets and your own horse. But actually, you're so right that you must know when to get behind the fence, to stay out of the field or out of the stable for your own
Yeah.
safety as well. Because as much as they are our own beloved pets and animals, they are incredibly dangerous when they fly, aren't they?
Yeah, you're not going to stop them from running around by being stood in the middle of the field. And, and let's face it, it's coming up to winter. The field is probably slippery and wet and muddy. So even if they were running towards you and tried to avoid you, they might try and stop as they got to you and could skid into you. So I think it doesn't mean you love your horse any less if you're not in there with them, but it actually shows that you're understanding their behaviour, which is so important, and understanding as a horse lover and owner how it is important that they react naturally and how they want to. So really on the night, our role is to just be calm and observe what they're doing, and obviously be there should they need us to be there. But I think it's important they know you're there, and that they're aware that you're not reacting. So it's really important that we just remain very calm, and don't ourselves react to what's going on.
And Ruth, we're all trying to keep our individual horses or small herds of horses or livery yards safe, but Blue Cross has and looks after thousands of horses every year. How, as an organisation, do you keep them safe? You mentioned you don't have displays backing on to the premises, which is brilliant, but how do you keep great herds of horses, thousands of horses, safe?
Really by how I introduced our chat, in that it's forward planning and just keeping them in their normal routine. So on both of our sites that we have, the horses will normally live out. The majority of them are living out in small herds. So we would make sure that the field's safe always, check the fencing is safe. There's no sort of hazards or anything in the fields, but actually we just keep to their normal routine. That's exactly what we do. If there were any horses that were in for whatever reason, sometimes we have them in barns, what we could do is leave the lights on there that night. Again, having them in a well-lit area can reduce the sort of impact of any flashes that are going off. So that's what we would do on site, is just try and keep to a normal routine. And obviously we would have someone around just to sort of make sure that they were okay. But, we have lots of horses that are out on loan. So we have our centres where our horses are. But actually, at any one time, we have 500 or so horses out in loan homes. So, in the build up to firework season, obviously sharing any advice with all those wonderful people that have rehomed horses from us, in the hope we can sort of keep it as calm and as stress and injury free as we can for all of them as well.
Such a big network that you have to be so
It is.
aware of.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah. And the horsey community actually is great, although it's vast. Everybody's there and trying to help each other. And, we have a sort of a Facebook group, and people will share great ideas and support on that as well, of what they do and things they've done and advice. So, yeah, use your horsey friends, use the local horsey community, and sort of share ideas as well. And, hopefully that'll help.
And how important do you think it is moving forwards to rely on our equestrian community to make progress and try and prevent accidents on nights like these?
Well, really important, again, because it's just educating people and ourselves. You'd be surprised how many horsey people aren't always aware of what we can do, or why horses are reacting like this. But I think it is really important to rely on each other, and to support organisations that are lobbying for change, such as campaigns to reduce the noise, the legal noise limit for fireworks. So really getting behind those as well, and sharing on our own social media. All our friends aren't horsey, are they? But if they read something we've shared, they'll probably take note, and it might just be that one conversation they can then have with someone, and it starts that sort of chain reaction, doesn't it, of making people more aware.
Oh, you're so right that actually we all have our own power to share content on Instagram, on Facebook, on local Facebook groups, making
Yeah.
reels that could go viral to actually help keep horses safe and educate those who aren't horsey as to what could happen. I don't
Yeah.
know if you've seen, Ruth, Red Wings shared just the other day
Yeah.
videos of their miniature horses fleeing from
Yeah.
great fireworks overhead and the
Yeah.
panic that ensues. And actually, it is, even for us horse owners who perhaps have all seen it before, I know certainly I have, it's all the more shocking to see it, isn't it, in a video and actually be there in that moment. And from
Yeah.
sure many people who are completely unaware of this, that is totally eye-opening.
Yes, 100%. I've got friends who aren't horsey and love fireworks, and I can just sort of tell sometimes when I start sort of talking about it that they're not quite getting it. But as you say, it's that visual, isn't it? And and I'd always try and keep everything positive as well. It's not a sort of a campaign of locking horns, and but it is just that positivity, that sharing of information and just awareness, isn't it? But certainly those visuals, and that video, and it's sort of really impactful. I've seen that as well. And probably what you experienced, very similar to what you
Oh,
experienced with the display near you. Yeah.
I wish that I'd filmed that, Ruth, many moons ago. Eventually, it was in the pandemic, I think, when they tightened their belts, they no longer
Right.
held a fireworks display anymore because of cutbacks. And of course, that was a huge relief to us. But it didn't help having the many years before that, having to deal with that situation where
No.
there's no way we could have stopped it happening. But I wish
No.
I'd filmed it. I wish I'd set up a camera and then actually posted that to say, this is what horse owners are facing. Look at these horses, the effects, look at the foam, the
Yeah.
sweat, the panic, the
Yeah.
whites of their eyes, the bloodshot red eyes, the panting that goes on for minutes, hours, half an hour afterwards where they're trying to calm down.
Yeah.
It is the worst feeling, but actually that could have changed and made a difference if people had seen it. It's got the chance to go viral and for people to make other decisions, hasn't it, when it
Yeah.
comes to fireworks displays?
Exactly it. I think if people were at a public display and were aware that there may be a field of horses next door, some of them might be asking for, using quieter fireworks. I think event organisers are really open to that. And a friend of mine did approach it was a local rugby club, and the firework people themselves agreed to use the quieter fireworks, say, and hopefully they'll just become far more commonplace, and we'll all in time forget what big banging fireworks were, and they'll just become the normal. But as I say, it's just spreading awareness.
And I think it would be a great challenge for all of us equestrians, for those watching and listening, and I'm going to take it on myself as well, to actually make content and share and spread the word this fireworks season, because actually we don't have to manually go and bang on doors to change people's minds. We don't have to, actually seek experts to try and make changes. We can take that upon ourselves, can't we? So maybe we could all make a Facebook post or a reel on Instagram and share it to talk about the dangers and see whose minds we can change online and how far we can spread
Yeah.
that campaign ourselves.
Great idea. And as I say, keeping it positive, keeping educational, sharing what some of the big organisations are sharing and putting out there as well, and just really getting behind those campaigns. But it's those real life situations, I think, that can really bring these things to home. And and the number of horses that are either injured or lose their lives, it's really unpleasant, really not necessary, is it? Let's face it.
And it is a really important topic. So even if people are locally being difficult or are quite upset if you're trying to talk to them, or they're a bit angry or they're a bit irritated, you are entitled to go and knock on their door and ask about fireworks and fireworks displays, if you know that the parties are being held locally, don't feel embarrassed, because I know it can feel like almost you're in the wrong because someone's trying to have a good time with their family and their friends. But actually, it's so important to protect the lives of our horses and to raise awareness. So, do knock, do pop a letter through a door, and try and open up those discussions, and try to not feel awkward about it.
Yeah, I think the general public are, as we say, are getting better in letting people know, but that isn't quite enough, is it? I mean, it's really good that we do know, because we can prepare and we plan. It's not going to be that sudden, shock when they go off. But again, it probably needs to go one step further than that, doesn't it? Really, and as I say, we don't want to see fireworks banned altogether, but certainly thinking about where displays are being held, when they're being held, and also the noise level.
It's funny you say that, Ruth. On a personal level, I would like to see fireworks displays banned. When I actually think about it, can we do without fireworks displays? There are so many other wonderful things you can go to. A bonfire night with the big bonfires, and
Yeah,
perhaps Guy Fawkes on the front, Halloween events where they're in,
yeah,
scare mazes and things like that. Light displays, these beautiful light
yeah,
trails are another way to see light, lit up skies and lit up trees and lit up water. They're so clever and so beautiful and immersive now. Why do we need to see great big rockets illuminating the skies when we can go to a beautifully artistic trail and feel the
yeah,
magic in actually a much more imaginative way, I would say, instead of
yeah.
actually impacting the environment, wildlife, horses and people who have PTSD, for weeks on
Yeah.
end sometimes. But Ruth, we will discuss the future in a minute. But what do we do if our horse cannot be controlled, cannot be calmed, and is inconsolable on the night? What do we do?
Do you know what? I mean, if they're running really scared, there probably isn't much, sadly, that we can do. We've already said it's so important to keep yourself safe, and actually their natural instinct is that they're wanting to do that. We can't stop them from doing that. Again, it just depends on the situation, doesn't it? It's probably slightly different if they're in a stable or if they're out, but it's that forward planning,
Do we call our vet on the
Well,
night?
yes. So
We
as I say,
can call our vet and
you
say,
may be able to
actually, we
call your
need you.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, you could. I mean, I'm saying forward planning. If you are really worried about how your horse might react, you may be able to. They may be able to talk you through some sedation for the horse, although that's not 100% foolproof. They can wake out of them, and at a click of a finger, and who knows what time you need to give it as well. But absolutely, if you're really worried about your horse, again, because we've said when they're running blind, they can have heart attacks. So it might not mean that your vet has to come out, but if you are really worried, give them a call and seek some advice, and say try and have other horsey people with you as well, because they may be able to calm you down. But again, it's just hoping that the fireworks won't last very long, and that more often than not your horse will calm down. It does happen that they're gonna keep running blind, but we've got to remind ourselves that's fairly it doesn't happen in every single case. So hopefully once the horses have sort of realised, or it's calmed down, they will calm down as well. But you've got to keep yourself safe. But if you are super, super worried, have some other horsey friends around for moral support. But yeah, if you're really worried about your horse's health, let's just say they aren't recovering very well, the fireworks are finished, they're still respiration rates really high, they're breathing through the roof, their pulse is really high, they're sweating, trembling, or not eating, call your vet, and they would rather you called them for a chat as well. So make sure you have your vet's number at hand, or if somebody else is keeping an eye on your horse for you, or if there's somebody else at the delivery yard that's on the rotor, make sure that the vet's number is really clear, so that you're not then wasting time trying to find the number where to call.
Oh, a really anxiety-inducing time. But Ruth, thank you for all of your advice, tips and guidance. It's been so helpful. When you look ahead, Ruth, to the next 5 years, What would you like to see to make it a better protected time for our horses?
Initially, a change so that the noise level of fireworks is reduced. So I would like to see that as an initial start. I think if we're calling for an outright ban straight away, we're probably not going to get public support. So perhaps that's just something that's really achievable and people can relate to. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that they are either law or far more commonplace. And again, it's that public awareness. We're all animal lovers. Majority of people are animal lovers. So I think, people just aren't aware. They aren't aware of how a horse actually reacts and how they think. And that public awareness could really be the difference.
And we'll all be preparing, won't we, in the run up now as we get
Yeah.
closer and closer to fireworks night.
Yeah.
We'll be getting on our coats and getting our little packed dinners. I know that's what we do, so that we can get up there with our thermos flasks and our sandwiches, coats, wrap up warm and sort of prepare to camp out for most of the night until after that sort of 11 o'clock midnight time when things die down. But it's an intense time, isn't it? We have enough to worry about, Ruth, with our horses, don't we, and their health and nutrition and fitness, and then we have this to add to everything else, as well as a daily workload.
Exactly. And as we've said, it's not just one dedicated night, is it? I think the added difficulty is they could happen at any time, and particularly over a couple of week period, even at this time of year. So, it is a worry, but get to know what's going on in your local area and then you're halfway there to being prepared.
And there are lots more help and advice as well on the Blue Cross website. I know that you've got articles to help people and videos as well to try and help prepare horse owners for the season.
Yeah, loads of information on the Blue Cross website. So it's really worth a visit just to have a look on there and just sort of recap on some of the things that we've discussed. Loads of helpful advice and tips.
Ruth, thank you so much for coming on Curious Equestrian.
It's my pleasure. It's been lovely to chat with you.